right now, we are facing, in some ways, at least a double whammy. There is COVID-19 that is driving fear in all of our communities, not just the Asian American community, all of our communities. And that fear causes a certain level of emotions. But then number two is the real geopolitical discussions that are happening, the tensions between the United States and China. It is absolutely correct to say that the Chinese government is doing some awful things. Whether we are talking about Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region, whether we are talking about free press in Hong Kong, or just a general surveillance state that exists in mainland China, there are legitimate disputes between the Chinese government and the United States government. But what we don't want is all of that to bleed over into the Chinese American society or the Asian American society writ large. And that is what we see happening, is when the president uses words like Chinese virus, Kung flu, and most recently at the presidential debate, China plague, that has a ripple effect, a real direct effect on all Asian Americans, not just Chinese Americans, all Asian Americans here in the country. What we have seen, our organization likewise has a website that tracks hate incidents, that allows people to tell stories about hate incidents that they have encountered. What we have seen is that that language has translated into actions by certain individuals, actions in the form of racist incidents, epithets, and outright violence at times. In fact, the ADL just put out a report, ADL being the Anti-Defamation League. They just put out a report this morning tracking online hate and showing spikes in online hate directed at Asian Americans after the president used the term China plague, and when other high-ranking officials have used these types of derogatory terms. This is not about word semantics. This is not about political correctness. This is about real-life consequences that happen as a result of this language, this fear that we are seeing. There are certainly policy issues that we could present, such as the Jabara Hire No Hate Act that Congress is trying to get passed right now, that offers some additional tools to how we can respond to hate. Now, there are policies that state and local governments can offer, essentially to provide victim services, among other things. Those are also pieces we need to look at. But then we also need to look at how do we also empower our own community during this time. One of the things that our organization is doing, again, I don't want to profess any sort of monopoly, a number of organizations are starting to do this, is what's called bystander intervention training, giving people in the community the tools to respond to these incidents if they're in a position that they're physically safe to do so. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you see someone that is becoming a victim of hate, let's say on a subway where racial epithets are being thrown at this victim, what is it that you can do? There's many little things that can be do that can have real consequences. It may be as simple as dropping your keys so that it distracts people and kind of reduces the level of tension that is there. If you are in a position that you feel comfortable doing it, you could say to that aggressor, hey, stop that. That is inappropriate behavior. You could also just help that victim and get close to that victim and give them a knowing look and just move them to a safe space or take them to the next station if it's on a subway. All of these acts makes a big difference. In fact, I had a conversation just 2 days ago with a person that was the victim of a physical assault. This was not in the last few months, but several years ago. And he was just saying, it would have just been so helpful to him if even someone just gave him a knowing look, just a sympathetic look to know that he was not alone when he was getting assaulted in that way. And so that's one of the things that we could also teach our community, teach all communities about, is how to respond in a way that shows some empathy, that gives us a little bit of power to take back the situation. There's a community that's working together on all of this. All of us have worked together in various different ways. And that energy that is building off of this negativity is something that we should regard as a positive and that we need to continue to push forward on. It really pains me that when Representative Meng introduced a resolution to condemn anti-Asian hate, over 164 Republicans opposed that resolution. And there was no good reason given except that, well, the resolution specifically called out President Trump. we need to get beyond that. And unfortunately, we need to get to we are in a position right now that people, some people are just unwilling to go against the rest of their party or the rest of their group that they talk to condemn racism. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We can have our policy differences, and we should. But when we see racism, we have to speak out about that. Now, one thing I would caution everyone about, though, is that this is going to extend beyond Election Day. Even if Joe Biden wins the presidency, these issues will not go away because the real tensions between the governments, between the United States and China, and some of these issues are going to remain, number one. And this white violent extremism that has been unleashed in this last 4 years is not going to go away. So we should not let our guard down, even if the election brings changes to the federal policymakers or even some state policymakers. That this issue is going to continue, and we need to be vigilant and talk about this in a thoughtful way.